Hi, everyone. I'm Pete Wright with LexJet, and I'm joined today by Chris Boyer. He's the Partner Business Manager at HP, and he's joining us today to talk to you about the brand new HP Latex 730 and 830 series. Chris, how you doing today?
Not too bad. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited about this. I feel like we just kind of got used to the 700 series that we have here at Experience Center, and then the 730 comes out, and I start seeing the stuff that's coming off of that. So I'm excited to chat with you today and get some information about it and learn a little bit about all the new stuff that's out there. And I guess with that in mind, let's just start with just kind of that 20,000 foot view. Give us kind of an overview of the 730 and the 830 on this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, thanks for the opportunity. And yeah, we're super excited to release the HP Latex 730 and 830 series. So the 730 and 830 builds off, a lot of the success we have or had with the 700 and 800 series. So the 700 and 800 series we released back in 2020, and that's the first opportunity we had to put Generation 4 latex ink into our 64-inch platform. So we took a lot of the learnings we got from customers and from the field and made a lot of updates to the product line, right? So many of the updates that you're going to see in the 730 and 830, you can't physically see it because it's components, it's inside the machine. And, just like any manufacturing process or technology, we're always looking at ways to upgrade it. And a lot of that is kind of mechanical and internal. So we do have many other, call it features and updates as well that I know that we're going to talk about. But a lot of the main updates are really internal components inside the 730 and 830 series.
So with that in mind, what kind of sets the 730 and 830 apart from the predecessors, the 700 800? And are there any performance and usability things that are going to be immediately noticeable to people that have had those before or used those?
Definitely, for sure. So part of our process, anytime we're, reinventing product or bringing new product to market, we take a close look at the market. We talk to our customers. We refer to them as PSPs or print service providers. And we're always looking at their business and looking at like what their requirements are, what their needs are, things that they liked about previous generations of products, things that they would like to see. And all that information data is collected. And that's kind of what we utilize to, make product development. So in this case here, there's a lot of product development that went into the 730 and 830 series. So a few things. So I'll kind of tag them one by one. So number one is HP pixel control technology. In layman's terms, it's a new color pipeline that allows us to control color down to the pixel level. So this is a piece of technology that we pulled from our DesignJet series. So it's legacy technology. But what that does now, it allows us to offer, better color control, better midtones, halftones, less stepping. And for the what we refer to as a PSP or print service provider, what that means is, you can utilize this printer at lower pass counts, which really translates into higher speeds and lower operational cost. Another big advancement is we're able to print about 4 inches away from the lead edge on most medias. So typically on self-adhesive vinyl. One thing with previous generations of latex, typically you would have to roll out about 18 inches of media just past the curing zone before you started to print. And that was just the way the product was designed. So a lot of customers would, have a complaint that, geez, before I started printing, I'm wasting X amount of media. So in this case here, we can avoid that. We did change the pinch roller system as well. So that offers better media feed. Another big advancement is being able to print from the lead edge. And when we say that, it's roughly about 4 inches away from the lead edge on most medias. And in this case here, self-adhesive vinyl is a typical example. When I look at previous generations of latex or generation 3 latex, one challenge or one kind of process we used to use, you'd have to advance the printer roughly about 18 inches before you can start printing. And one complaint we got from the field is it's quite a bit of media waste depending upon what the customer is using. So now we've avoided that, and now you can print 4 inches away from the lead edge. Another new system we developed is a new pinch roller system. So that improves media traction. We typically were getting light media slippage on certain medias. Now with that new pinch roller system, we're able to avoid that. With our Latex 365 and 570, previously those products had automated double-sided printing. So when we released the 700 800, we did not have that process automated. You could potentially do it as a manual process. So we've now automated that process with the 730 and 830. And again, that's feedback we received from the field, and that's a feature set that customers really wanted. Another, customer feedback was on the maintenance cartridge side and improving the life. So now that we've improved the life of the maintenance cartridge, what that really translates to is about 40% longer life. And it lowers the operational cost of the printer. Another big advancement is our print head SKUs. So this is kind of twofold. It helps our distributors and partners like LexJet who are selling, these SKUs and these products, and helps our customers. So right now, what we've changed now, we've moved to a universal print head SKU. So this SKU is good for, our 4 primary colors plus light cyan, light magenta, and overcoat. And now there's only 3 heads. So our primary heads for the primary colors, and now white and optimizer. So only 3 SKUs for our print heads. In terms of speed now, one challenge that we ran into with the 700, 800 series is getting, better speed and faster speed when utilizing white. So now, when you're utilizing, overflood, underflood, 3-layer, 5-layer of print modes, we're getting up to 30% more speed with these products. Tile optimization is always something that, if you're doing panel jobs, vehicle wraps, making sure tiles line up and colors match, that's always been, I wouldn't say a challenge, but always been, a need and want in the industry. So now we have an automated tile optimization mode, which improves length repeatability plus pattern repeatability. And lastly, the last thing I would comment on is the embedded spectrophotometer. So before, this is something that was sourced from a third-party manufacturer. Now we're manufacturing our own HP Spectro. So what that really does for the customer, it offers better color repeatability and consistency on all of your prints.
That's a lot of stuff. I mean, you guys have, typically when you see a bump up or a jump from one system to the next generation, a lot of times it'll be minor changes. You guys, you packed this with a lot. I mean, that's a big step up between the 700 series and the 730 and the 800 series and the 830. There's some pretty big enhancements there. Just between the 730 and 830 themselves, just between those two, what are we going to see when it comes to differences between those two models in print speeds and the ink systems?
Okay, so great question. So in terms of print speed, between the 730 and 830, it's roughly about 15% faster utilizing the 830. The big really change, or I shouldn't say change, or the big differentiator between the 730 and the 830, it's the ink system. So it's still using a Generation 4 ink, but the 730 is using a 1-liter system, and the 830 is using a 3-liter system. So really what that translates to, it's operational cost. It's still using the same print head, still using the same maintenance cartridge, but moving to a 3-liter system gives you, better operational cost. And if a customer wants to run overnight, having a 3-liter system gives you that opportunity. So that's the big change, or not, I shouldn't say change, but that's the big differences between the 730 and the 830 series.
And I see the 830 is actually Hot-Swappable. How does that affect, in the high volume environment, just the flow of a business?
Yeah, so that's a very important feature. We actually had that feature in the 800 series. So by having inks Hot-Swappable, the way we do it within the 830 or 800 series even, there's a sub-tank. So the main 3-liter box fills the sub-tank, and the head draws from that sub-tank. So what that does now is if somebody wants to maybe run overnight printing or longer runs, they're never going to be in a situation where the printer stops because it's drawing from that sub-tank, not as the primary, not the 3-liter box. So it just offers really better workflow and better opportunity to run like the printer for longer lengths of periods.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen printers that aren't Hot-Swappable, and you'd be in the middle of a print and you get some notification that, hey, you got to swap inks. And it doesn't matter how good the technology is, you always seem to see that line of demarcation where the printer stopped, you swapped inks and put it back in. So the fact that it's Hot-Swappable in the middle of the print, that's pretty spectacular.
In many technologies, Pete, it will not give you the option to replace the ink, or you're on limited time to replace the ink. Because like you said, you're going to physically see a line or where the print stopped. But in most technologies, the printer will just error out and you're going to lose your print. So, imagine running maybe a 30, 40, 50-foot panel and you just lost it. There's a waste of media, there's a waste of ink and supply, and a waste of time on top of that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, 30, 40, 50 feet, that's insane just to think about it. And I mean, look, ink and media, it's not cheap, but at the same time, it's like time isn't cheap either. I mean, you're talking about a large print, and with these machines, that's what you're looking at. When you get into latex, you're looking at outdoor signage, things like that could be really large types of prints. So the idea of having a system that really protects you from wasting your ink, wasting your media, and wasting your time, that's a great backup. Now, one of the things you had mentioned earlier on was the universal print heads. Talk to me about how those universal print heads are going to help in terms of maintenance and productivity.
Oh, definitely. The universal print heads, well, a couple things, and I kind of touched on it before. Having universal print heads makes it a lot easier for the customer to keep, call it less SKUs or less the print heads on their shelf. And in so many cases, maybe there's a back order issue. Maybe a customer just doesn't want to keep, X amount of print heads on their floor, and they're only choosing certain colors. By making them universal, we're down to 3 SKUs. So it helps, for you guys as being one of our partners, you guys are going to stock less SKUs on your shelf. It's going to be easier to manage inventory. Then on the customer side, they're not going to have to keep, X dollars of inventory on their shelf, but, it improves cash flow slightly, right? The other thing that I didn't note is those print heads eventually will be backwards compatible. So for your customers that have 700s and 800s in the field, we're going to make those print heads backwards compatible. It's going to be with a firmware update that's going to be coming shortly. So now that technology is going to be moved into the 700 and 800 series as well.
Hey, so we got breaking news here. That's pretty awesome to have some insight on something that's coming. Just to think that way. I mean, again, a lot of times manufacturers, when they produce a new printer, they're not thinking about the last model anymore, other than, hey, we could still sell ink to the people that have them. They're moved on to the next one. So the fact that you guys are thinking, hey, we still want to take care of these guys. They have these 700s and 800s in the field. If there's things we can do with this new technology that help them still continue to enjoy and have better experiences with those machines, that's really awesome.
Yeah, it's gonna. We want to make it easier for you guys, and also most importantly for those customers as well.
So talk to me a little bit about the overcoating. I know that's something that you had mentioned as well. Talk to me about how that helps with the durability and then the image quality that we will see off of these printers.
No, for sure. So Overcoat is something, and I always refer to these ink generations, from Gen 1, 2, 3, now 4, right? And the reason why we refer to ink generations is every time we have a new generation of ink, there's an advancement in the technology. One thing that I think we do a pretty good job at is, we're not always just looking at, the mechanics of the printer and the hardware. One of our important developments is always the chemistry of the ink and the print heads, right? And that's kind of like one of our central parts of, building latex printers. So now with the Overcoat, Overcoat was something that was part of the chemistry in what we refer to as Generation 3 ink. And what it is really is it's an anti-scratch coating. It makes the ink super durable. And that's why Overcoat was developed in that ink chemistry. So as great as it is, one thing with Overcoat is that it's such a strong chemistry in the sense that sometimes it might have the potential of resisting laminate. So you'd have to let the laminate cure before you go and apply that film to maybe a vehicle or something else. So what we did is in Generation 4 ink, we separated the Overcoat out of the chemistry. So that gave us the opportunity to add more pigment to the ink. But now that channel can be controlled. It is a flood channel. So what that means is it's not a spot UV. It's really just a flood channel. So wherever you're laying down ink, you can control the Overcoat by, half increments or 0.5 increments up to 3. And what that really does is it improves scratch resistance. It doesn't replace laminate, but for example, maybe you're doing stickers, or you're doing decal, maybe a wallpaper, things that you typically maybe do not want to laminate. That's where Overcoat's going to come in. But at the same time, though, if you're doing like vehicle graphics and maybe something that it's going to be cleaned, maybe it's in a hospital environment, then we definitely recommend laminate. Really, the way it's positioned, it's an anti-scratch coating. That's the best way to position Overcoat. And in terms of print quality, it doesn't really enhance it. It just, there's no finish to it. If you put Overcoat in one area versus another area, it's going to look the same.
So it's kind of an all or nothing thing. It's either coating the entire image in various increments or nothing at all.
Exactly. Just a flood coat. And a lot of customers ask, well, hey, can I control that channel and use it as a spot? You like call it a spot varnish or spot UV. It's a flood channel. So you can't control that call it that print channel.
But I mean, at the end of the day, that scratch resistance is the most valuable thing. I mean, when you look at, like we just said, that line of demarcation, if you run out of ink and now you've got this line and you potentially lost that entire print, same thing happens. Let's say you print this entire thing and then somebody just brushes their finger across it lightly. A lot of printers, you do that, you're going to see that mark on there. With this flood coat, just having that little bit of protection so that minor scuffs and things like that aren't as common really protects your print, especially if it's something you're printing for a client that's time sensitive. You want to get it out there and you want to make sure that they can handle it while they're mounting it and not damage it.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because with a lot of ink tech or other ink technologies, many cases print is being damaged in handling an application, right? And before they were able to, get some laminate on it. With Overcoat, you can put a small increment of Overcoat on the print and it protects the print. So you can handle it, try to scuff it, and it's going to be fine. Then you can go through your lamination process to add that, final, call it durability process. So no, that's a really good point.
You mentioned the Spindleless paper loading on this. And I think for certain people that maybe don't come from the HP atmosphere, they don't necessarily know what that means. Can you kind of explain to us what Spindleless loading is, how it works, and how it helps people that maybe aren't familiar with it?
For sure, yeah. So if you look at the customers that we sell to, we sell to small, medium, and larger print service providers. Most people who operate, whether it's, our printer, maybe it's a UV printer, solvent printer, typically it's one person doing the operation and one person loading the media. And if you look at the medias that, that you guys sell or that come from 3M or Avery or those companies, they range from 40 pounds up to over 100 pounds. And if you're one individual trying to load a printer, it's very awkward if you're taking this long spindle, having to push it through a core, then lift up that heavy media, then get it onto the printer. So most printers are rear loading, and part of the development of latex is making easy operation for the operator. So all of our latex printers, including the 730, 830, they are front loading. So what that means is, this printer could be against the wall and you're loading the printer from the front, not from the rear. That's number one. Then number two, now Spindleless, what that means is on either side of the spindle, we just have two media clamps that grip the media. So, in terms of loading now, it's super easy. You just have to pick up the media, put it onto the tray, grab one end, load it onto one clamp. Then there's actually a media lifter. Push the media lifter down and clamp the other side. So what that really does now, it's only one person is required to load the printer. In all honesty, it could prevent injury in regards to somebody trying to balance a heavy weight, trying to put a spindle through it. And it makes easier operation. Maybe it's just one person running a business or running their business, right? It makes it very easy to operate the printer without, needing two people to load the printer. So it's, in summary, it's really easy loading for heavy medias. That's the way I would like to summarize it.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen people loading media on spindles, and sometimes you get these 60-inch rolls or 64-inch rolls, and it almost looks like you're a circus performer trying to perform a balancing act to get it up, get it over the spindle, loaded, stand it upright, get the end cap put on. It's just not necessarily the simplest process in the world. And these HP printers, they handle heavy rolls of media. So you're talking about a pretty good weight. So like you said, a lot of these machines load from the back. So not only could you potentially hurt yourself, but in the process of lifting a really heavy roll of media over a printer, if you drop it, you could damage the printer. And that's, now you're talking about damaging your investment. You crack your LCD screen, your touch screen, or a hood or something like that. Now you're down because you're just loading paper.
Correct. And especially if you're doing an example of a super heavy media is like traffic, 3M or Avery traffic media, and trying to balance that as an individual, it's difficult. It's very hard. So it just creates a much better environment for the end user, and a more safer environment by doing it spindleless, much easier.
What other features would you say are really important in terms of affecting the efficiency and avoiding downtime?
For sure. So no, that's a great question. And some of them I've mentioned before, but when latex was developed, and this is like throughout, all of our generations is, number one, it's an easy maintenance routine. So for example, if you're doing print head replacements, the maintenance cartridge, cleaning, oiling the carriage rail, these are all things that you can do yourself. if you look at competitive technologies, a lot of times when it's certain maintenance routines or head replacements, that's a service call. And then if you look at the geography, whether it's, in North America, we've got printers in some pretty remote places. So being able to do that yourself really, prevents downtime, creates higher uptimes, and it makes it much easier for the customer to maintain their printer. The spindleless loading we just talked about, that makes it definitely a lot easier to not necessarily maintain the printer, but to use the printer. Printing, SAV from the lead edge is definitely more efficient for the customer, reduces media waste, especially, a lot of medias get into, high dollars in terms of cost per square foot. By having that feature there, definitely eliminates media waste. And the other thing, I just want to quickly talk about is, what we refer to as our care packs. So our care packs are our service option. So depending upon the customer volume or how much they're printing, we have multiple levels of service options, for on-site repair, or maybe a customer is like, hey, I just want a warranty on, parts only. With our care packs, there's remote support options that are available as well. So we've got kind of multiple ways to, create efficiencies within somebody's business in their shop and to reduce downtime.
Now, the 630, last month we did our feature on the 630, and I know the 630 is part of the family. You got 630, 730, 830. How do you determine which of those models is right for what business? What really separates the three in terms of, okay, this is what I'm doing, which model should I use?
No, that's a question I would say that we probably get in every sales cycle. You have 630, 730, 830. They all kind of look somewhat similar to a certain extent. And there's actually, it's kind of like there's multiple questions we ask to determine what's the best product, right? So number one, volume. That's the number one question I always ask customers is like, what's your volume? Are you running a roll per month, or is it 10 rolls per month? So typically, the math for the 830 is if somebody's running at roughly about 6 rolls per month, immediately we're going to push somebody towards the 830 series. The main reason being is operational, the cost of the printer. It's going to save you roughly about 6 cents, maybe a little bit more, depending upon what you're printing per square foot. And if you take, if you amortize that over, a 675 square foot roll, times that by 6 rolls, that's kind of the delta we need to really justify an 830 series. The 630, I hate to call it entry level because it's not far from an entry level printer, but for us, it is our entry device. So a few things. So within the 630, we don't have a Spectro on board. And these are just different differentiators between like the 730 and 830. There's no Spectro. White ink printing is available. It's only available as, underflood, overflood, spot, and 3-layer. If somebody wants to do fabric with a 630, there is no ink collector. You can still do fabric, but non-porous fabric with the 630. And the other thing too, of course, is capital cost. Like the 630, as an example, Flexi's in the box. It's full version that's included. With the 730, 830, the RIP is optional. We are bundling it with Onyx, but it's not a full. That's not a full version of Onyx, but it's a cloud version. And right now, from my understanding, it's going to be available roughly for about 6 months. Then after the 6 months, customers are going to have to decide, if they want to stick with Onyx or go with a different RIP provider. But when you look at the 730, 830, there is a lot more features that are built into that printer compared to the 630. So you can do up to 5 layers of printing with white with the 730 and 830. There is a Spectro that's built in, so it gives you better color control and better color repeatability. There is a textile kit that's available as well with the 730 and 830 series. So if a customer is getting into maybe non-porous or porous textiles and non-porous as well, or maybe certain window films, then the 730, 830 would be a better option. But mainly, I would always say volume is kind of like the number one. Application definitely is more important. It is something that's important, but volume is really, to me anyway, what dictates the differences between these products.
Now, you mentioned RIP softwares, and I don't want to go deep dive on this because you kind of mentioned them, but is it pretty easy to integrate these into maybe an existing RIP that you already have? And do they come with RIP software? I think you kind of touched on it, but...
Yeah, no, that's a question that's on every sales cycle as well. So the 630 series it does come with a full version SI Flexi for the 630, 630W, and the 630 print and cut series. So that's in the box. So on the customer side, it helps, kind of reduce the capital cost in terms of their investment. On the 730 and 830, we do bundle it with Onyx as like the cloud version, just for a temporary basis. Typical rips that we see customers that are going with are Flexi, Onyx, and Caldera. There is other rip manufacturers that will have driver support for our products, but that's kind of the mainline rips that we're seeing in the market. Not to say other rips are not being used, but I would say probably over 90% of our customers, those are the three solutions that they're typically going with. We don't necessarily, we always let the customer decide whatever works best for their business. And if there's a current workflow that they're using with an existing rip provider, that's probably the best option to go with.
One of the other headline features is that there's a white ink version of this. Similarly, you had the 700 and 800W versions. This also has the 730W, 830W. What is, or if there is anything, what's new about the white ink options on this, and what kind of applications does that white ink really help you achieve?
Okay, yeah, great question. So white ink, like you mentioned, Pete, is available on the 730 and the 830 and the 630 series as well. So the main sort of advancement is the speed. So speed is improved roughly about 30%. In terms of application, white ink is always a challenge for, most end users. Previous to latex, white ink was available in solvent UV, but it's very difficult to maintain just because of the nature of the chemistry. So a couple things. So the white ink is auto maintenance, meaning it maintains itself. So when you're using the white ink, you put the print heads in. When you're not using it, you take the print heads out and it automatically maintains the print heads. Then also the other thing too is the white ink is always in suspension. So what that means is the white ink is always moving through the printer. So there is no real maintenance to the white. Previous technologies, maintenance was always a challenge, and typically the lifespan of the white ink was limited just by the nature of the chemistry. In terms of application now, there's a few applications. So there's under flood, over flood, spot white, 3-layer and 5-layer. So the ones that need a bit of describing would be the 3-layer and 5-layer. So the 3-layer white ink application is color, white color. So that would be for like an interior graphic, maybe an office partition separation, where you've got two different images on either side, but no direct UV light that's hitting it, or maybe a day-night application. So a 5-layer application is, color, white, black, white, color. So black having a blockout layer in between. So what that would be used for is an application for an exterior window film where you want two unique graphics on either side and you have UV light hitting it. So maybe it's a McDonald's, they're advertising a Big Mac, and the other side they want to advertise a cheeseburger. They can do that with a 5-layer print.
It's similarly like a push-pull on a door. You walk up and it says push on one side, pull on the other. I think that's one of the coolest things, because in the past is you had to print two separate things, one for either side. Now you can do it on one side, have it posted to the inside of the door so that it's protected. It's not going to get vandalized by people when you're closed, but you still have that visibility off of one print with that 5-layer printing. That's pretty cool.
Exactly. Yeah, your install would be on the inside of the window, inside of the window.
With all of this technology, let's touch on a few of the different applications and things that maybe people don't know that these printers can do. I know there's some really cool things that you guys have on the website that it really gets into the different areas of applications. Can you touch on some of those for me?
Yeah, so for sure, in terms of applications, it's, I almost like to say it's limitless. From vehicle graphics to stickers and decals. We've got customers focused in on wallpaper only for interior decor. Window films that we were just talking about with white ink. White ink adds like a whole new level of customization to window films. With our Gen 4 inks, we can print on simple like paper-based products for posters, traffic signage. Like with the 730, 830, we're just in the process of getting the 3M certification for traffic signage. We already have that on 700, 800, so that's coming down shortly. So traffic signage is a unique and, call it the boutique application that a lot of customers are involved in. Textile applications that you can't necessarily do with competing technologies without going through a sublimation process, right? Backlits, frontlets, solid color films with white. It's the creativity with, to me, it's the white that adds that new layer of creativity, but it's all the amount of materials. Like, for example, on our media locator, we have roughly over 2,000 media profiles that are available. There is a lot of materials that are available for these printers, and it really expands the the creativity of our what we refer to as our PSPs or print service providers.
Now we're kind of getting to the end, and I want to touch on a couple of things. Before we get into kind of who this is right for and making the decision to move to it, one of the things that I've always admired about HP is that you guys are super eco-conscious. Can you talk to me about some of the things that are built into these machines that really can make the consumers and the people that buy them feel good about their decision when it comes to taking care of the environment?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And, latex was developed back in 2008 for that primary reason that, we want to bring a technology to the market that's eco-conscious, that's good for the operator, good for the end customer, and, good for any users, right? Competing technologies, there's somewhat hazardous inks, and we wanted to stay away from that. So a few things. So within our build of our products, we're using up to 40% ocean-bound plastics in the build. If you look at our cartridges, we're using cardboard packaging now for, our 3 liters or 1 liter cartridge. So now the customer can literally put that into recycling. If you look into a lot of shops that are using plastic cartridges, you're going to see a mound of cartridges they don't know what to do with because those have to go into hazardous waste recycling. The other thing too is we do have a take back program called Planet Partners. So we have a free recycling program for hardware and also our inks and print heads. So all that is fully recyclable. So, and the other thing to consider is every ink generation that we release, it's getting more and more eco-friendly with more certifications, right? That's always been a main focus in our business, and that continues to be a focus moving forward.
All right, last question. I'm an older shop. I've been around for a while, and I'm running some of the older latex technology. And I'm on the fence because what I have still works great, but now there's all this new technology. What should I be looking at saying, okay, it's time to make the leap? And what am I looking at in terms of an ROI return on this to say, not only is the technology there, but this is going to save me money? What should be those decision makers for that shop that's running some older technology and finally making the decision to make the leap?
Pete, great question. This is a question I have with, on a daily basis with end users, like why upgrade? So a few things, when you look at somebody's business or, our most successful print service providers, they're always making investments into their business, right? On the HP side, we're always looking at ways, okay, how else can we increase somebody's volume of business? How else can we, earn that customer more revenue? So a few things, expanded applications with Generation 4 ink and especially white, which we talked about. We like talking about high value applications. So that could be like, printing on the window films we discussed, printing on metallics, wallpaper, maybe specialty films, maybe solid color films. And those are all possible because of, call it the new products that we're releasing or our Generation 4 inks. I like to refer to these printers as 3-in-1 printers because, with this printer, you can print on your standard SAVs, which you're using for vehicle graphics, or maybe wall decals that you're maybe using a solvent or UV printer for. You can do fine art with these printers, like from canvas to fine art wallpapers, which typically might be an aqueous application. And you can also print on fabric, which typically is a sublimation application for like backlits and frontlets and certain decor items, right? When printing on fabric, it is quite durable, but you can only spot clean the fabric. The other thing too is like, with these new printers, operational costs. Operational costs is, we were able to bring down, and depending upon what you're printing, with that HP pixel control we discussed, that's another consideration why, a customer would want to consider upgrading. And the other part, of course, is operational efficiencies, right? These printers are faster, they're easier to load. We talked about numerous efficiencies with maintenance, and that's just a few reasons why somebody's going to want to upgrade. And keeping up to date with technology is always going to add improvements to your business. And always, with our new ink generation, it's going to add a whole new level of applications you can bring to the market.
Yeah, and there's no reason you can't keep both. I mean, if you have an older device that's working great, hang on to it. Make it for certain things that you maybe don't need this new technology for. Now you're running double efficiency. Now you've got the new technology running things that you couldn't do before and adding new streams of revenue to your business that you didn't have the capabilities of before. And the things that you could always handle, let the old machines handle that. Now you're doubly efficient. So it's kind of, there's just a lot of different ways to look at it.
And lastly, the one thing I always like to tell the customers, it's we're very fortunate in this part of the business, and for our customers, it's a high margin business. And then when you look at the investment on these products, I always like looking at it on a leasing basis. It's a maybe average product. It's $500-$600 a month investment. On average, maybe a little bit more depending upon your lease terms. It's not really a big investment, but when you look at the return, the ROI is always a simple ROI with these printers. It's a very easy ROI.
Chris, thanks again for joining us today. It's always great to have somebody from HP come on and really just dive right in and make sure that our customers are hearing information directly from the source, not just what we think. So thanks for jumping on with us.
Pete, really appreciate the time and appreciate the opportunity to talk about the 730, 830 series, and we're really excited to be working with you guys on this.
And if you think the 730 or 830 series are right for you, give us a call at 800-4LEXJET. We've got somebody standing by to help you and answer any questions that you might have. And for any of your printer and supply needs, check us out at LexJet.com.